Good morning. Boy, hopefully you haven't gotten blown away in Wisconsin today. I don't know what it's like around the rest of the country, but I'm looking out the window and man, last night was terrible. Today's not much better. Wind's blowing like crazy. But we needed the rain. We did. We did need the rain. Well, I had a great weekend. Busy with getting things ready for planting stuff and cleaning up the yard and doing all kinds of stuff that we all do in the spring. As always, thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe, please like, and please share. Always helps, push that message out there and helps me gain more listeners and watchers and friends across the state and across the country. And if you're so inclined, call in. There's all kinds of fun stuff we're going to talk about today happening around the country and here locally. That would be just a pleasure to talk to anybody willing to voice in how they feel about what's going on. And I know out in California, the big question is wet sand or dry sand? That's the question. That's what it's come to, right? And that's the title of today's show is Wuhan flu, coronavirus, Covid-19, data, fact or fiction. Now, that may sound a little critical or a little over the top, but where are we now? I mean, you got wet sand, dry sand, we're shutting off people's power. I mean, in California, they've gone absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. Wet sand, dry sand. I mean, it's proven fact. UV lights, UV rays break down the virus. Being outside breaks down the virus. Okay? And that's a fact. But it's not a fact that they like to use, because if they use that fact, then they can't make the argument that you can't be outside, or you can't be at the beach, or we've all got to hide in our homes. I mean, we don't need to hide in our homes. In fact, we could have a great Memorial Day weekend. We could all be outside. And businesses could open up their businesses outside. So there's all kinds of misinformation that's going on out there. I mean, and if you've watched any of the links in my latest shows, there have been countless statements related to manipulation of data. And one of those is the issue related to mask or no mask. Give me just a quick second here. Trying to log in to see how I look this morning. That's always fun. How do I look this morning? Call me. Tell me how I look this morning. There's a good topic. Call me. Tell me how I look this morning. I like it. So bear with me.
Welcome to
Holy cow! I'm not wanting to go there yet. So let's get to the next spot. Oops. Hang on. Live now. Let's see how I look. Hey, there I am. Oops. Hang on. Type in good morning for all those watching this morning. But yeah, so I read an article done by the University of Minnesota based on a study related to masks. So you see it in the news, you see it all over the country, people have memes about it, all the crazy masks that are being utilized, from maxi pads to diapers to coffee filters to t-shirt material to N95 masks, to maybe even people have gone as far to say some sort of respirator. So when we talk about masks and the craziness behind masks and data, you know, why would anyone want to not give us the right data? Well, we're going to listen to Laura Ingraham this morning, and hopefully this will kind of set the tone for why I believe that's the case.
Garden today. And what did he do? He announced his new vaccine task force. He set the bar high with an aggressive timeline. But he gave America at the same time just what she needed: optimism for opening.
We have the best and most devoted workers
So
ever
the
to walk
president is
the face
working
of
to
the
get
earth.
the country back on
now
its feet
we're
and
combining
reopen,
all of these amazing
which is the right
strengths
thing.
for the most aggressive vaccine project in history. And I just want to make something clear. It's very important. Vaccine or no vaccine, we're back. And we're starting the process.
I was doing the fist pump right there. Yes. Well, Democrats, on the other hand, they just prefer us to cower and crouch in our houses. They are pushing, a friend of mine called today, panic porn. They say we need multiple vaccines, not just one, but multiple. They say the vaccines, even if we have them, we don't know how effective they'll be. They say we need as many as 300,000 government-paid tracers and trackers, hundreds of millions of tests, all of that before we can open again. And a purple unicorn on every street corner. The basic point here is Democrats just don't trust you. And frankly, they don't even like you. So of course they want you to stay indoors, off the streets, and even out of your churches. With only a few exceptions, blue state governors all favor lockdowns over liberty. One of the absolute worst is Michigan's Gretchen Whitmer.
Certainly an extra way make it likelier that we're going to have to stay in a stay-home posture.
You're not behaving. Washington State's Jay Inslee is punishing people with another extension of his stay-at-home order to the end of May now, even though they flattened the curve back in April in Washington State. This is insane. So when will he give up his vice grip on power?
It's just a long ways away from that, because we know that the numbers are still so high in our virus that it just can't justify opening up all these businesses right now.
Did you hear that? The
It's
numbers
not
are so high.
infections, Jay. It's hospitalizations and deaths. That's what is the key here. Illinois Governor Jay Pritzker's
health orders. Local law enforcement and the Illinois State Police can and will take action.
Ooh, big threat for a big man. All right. Well, in Gavin Newsom's California, local officials are slapping already suffering businesses with $1,000 citations and threats for jail time for not complying with everything from mask wearing to social distancing, the way they're handling their businesses, whether the stickers are on the ground. LA County, the most populous in the state, is extending its lockdown at least another 3 months. I thought that was a joke when I first heard it. Meanwhile, the mayor of LA, he's power tripping.
We're still getting reports each day of non-essential businesses that continue to operate as normal. This behavior is irresponsible and selfish. If we see continued non-compliance, they'll wind up facing a misdemeanor charge, and DWP will step in and shut off their water and power.
And by the way, these prohibitions, and I love that shutting off your water and the prohibitions, they aren't written in law. They're done through gubernatorial edict. So as long as it's called an emergency, these governors think that they can trample on your rights with impunity, and they're doing that. But lawsuits are being filed. That was good news this week. People who've never protested before in their lives are picking up placards and protesting, even when their livelihoods are threatened, if they still have jobs, or they're even being threatened with jail time. And you just get the sense being out there that Americans are just fed up.
We have a daycare center in Franklin County. It's not open the whole way, so it's barely open enough to keep us afloat.
These things are typically a choice. There's a measles outbreak, and they have all the people who are sick stay home. This is totally flipped. they're making the well stay home, and that makes no sense to me. It don't make us. It's unlawful.
I think Americans need to realize their freedoms are being taken away, and if they don't stand up for them right now, there won't be any freedom to stand up for.
But do any of you watching tonight think that Pelosi and Schumer care about those people? Of course they don't. If you've lost your job, if your child is struggling with distance learning, don't you love that phrase? If you're struggling with loneliness or addiction or depression, you're just collateral damage on the way to the new normal.
All of us are going to be living in a new normal, whether that means wearing a mask, working in shifts.
We're turning to our new normal with all of what we talked about through all phases.
What we have to do is to design a new normal, a way of life to carry us to the other side.
Their idea of a new normal, not so much Dr. Birx, by the way, I'm talking about the politicians. She just got caught up in the lingo. It goes far beyond finding a vaccine or hand washing or covering your sneezes. That's all fine. That's just common sense. The new normal for them is basically everything that Hillary ran on and lost, plus some new radical ideas, from climate change to mass amnesty to guaranteed income and to a massive wealth tax. If the pandemic ends, Democrats lose their leverage, and they know it. That's why every chance they get, their media allies stoke the fears of a weary and worried nation. They want you to be afraid, very afraid. Because when you're afraid, they have more power and they have more authority to tell you how to live your life. And make no mistake, they want this to continue indefinitely. They're playing the only card they have, the fear card. But there are increasing signs in these polls and on the streets that it isn't working. There's traffic again around D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. I noticed it today. And in the always lively New Orleans, we're going to hear from Raymond in a moment, restaurants are still shut down, but folks are out and about again. Many, he told me, are just ignoring the mask shamers outside coffee shops. Freedom brigades of ordinary citizens are now activated. Enterprising Americans are making adjustments and innovating smartly. Naturally, NASCAR will be the first national sport to reopen, albeit without fans. West Virginia University's football coach, he announced the fall season is on. The SEC better follow. Talking to you, Alabama. My friends at Cambria in Minnesota put out a video of an old Paul Harvey broadcast today that really seemed apt.
The more history I study, ours and others, the more certain I am that there is one fertilizer essential to the survival of civilization, and that fertilizer is sweat. I mean the kind of steamy, streamy, salty sweat that's wrung from a man by hard physical work. Somehow, the sweat gets into the soil of a farm or a factory or a city or a state or a nation, and everything thereabouts grows tall and strong and tough enough to stand against any storm.
To stand against any storm. The work ethic of Americans, the need to work and work hard. Of course, he nailed it. Paul Harvey always did. Americans have thrived on the idea that although life is often hard and challenging, you and your family have the freedom to decide how you want to live it. Democrats may live in shutdown nirvana, but the emerging consensus is this. If you want to stay at home, you can stay at home. But for the rest of us, we'll make our own decisions, thank you. Now we know more about this virus. Extremely low lethality, or otherwise healthy younger Americans, they do pretty well. Seniors, they need special care. And since the so-called experts say it will be around forever, it's time to move on with our lives. The testing issue is just another Democrat red herring, more impossible hoops to jump through. Testing and tracking for the rest of your life, since the virus will be with us forever, just like the flu, they say. The virus has taken many lives. And it's awful. It's a tragedy. It's wrecked a once great economy. But it has also shown for all the world to see who these new radical Democrats really are and what they want. They're petty dictators who want to fundamentally change the America we love. You know, the old normal. The masks are off. And that's the angle.
Yeah. Isn't that true? So, when you ask yourself that question that says, because I get all kinds of comments whenever I bring up something that's challenging in terms of a topic on Facebook. You know, and it's a lot of times it's an attack. You know, they make statements like, well, why don't you take your mask off and I'll come cough on you, or yeah, go to church and die, or you know, you're a moron. It's just crazy the way people can't have civil discourse on a topic and talk about actual fact, and not realize that the facts are being manipulated to do exactly what you heard from Laura Ingraham. They're running out of data that's supporting what they're doing and the control that they currently have over the populace and the business and whatever agenda they might have. Because I'm not trying to identify, you know, like in some specifics what the agenda is, because I don't have all the facts to understand it. But we do know that there's a huge push out there to make sure that President Trump is not reelected, and that the current push with states being shut down and continued to be shut down is pushed by mainly Democratic governors, our governor being one of them. You know, the Supreme Court overturned his decision, and he continues to try to exert his authority in making sure that he controls what happens in the state. My hope is that every state in the country will take this issue to the Supreme Court and get the control back where it belongs, which is with the people. So as I always advocate, with the people. Now let's talk about some things that, you know, aren't being driven by science. One of them is being masks. All right, so you've got everything from the shirt on your back to a surgical mask, something like this, right? So you got a surgical mask, and remember now, these surgical masks don't seal properly potentially on your face. Same thing, then we move to an N95 mask and something to this effect. And this mask is specifically designed as a semi-respirator and can control different particle sizes. This can control different particle sizes. Your shirt can control different particle sizes. And the next thing that's not being talked about is going to the extreme, to a respirator. So what particles are these masks capable of filtering, and how do you keep this up? Because the argument goes, well, you're wearing it to keep from giving the virus to someone else. Well, the minute you cough or sneeze or breathe out hard, if your mask doesn't handle the micron size of the COVID virus, it stops everything that's over whatever microns it can stop, and the COVID virus just flows through. I mean, because it's in a water droplet, and the water droplet stopped doesn't mean the virus is stopped. And it doesn't mean the whole water droplet stopped. It's not based on factual data. And going back then to the report that was done by the University of Minnesota, and University of Minnesota is a pretty reputable institution, been around for a long time. In fact, it's been around longer than the state of Minnesota. So, and if you look at the report, it's got about 5 pages of references. So, you know, I mean, in terms of misinformation, this is anything but misinformation. I mean, you've got, you know, sheets and sheets and sheets of references and testing that was done to just try to create an initial study. It's not the conclusive study, but it's an initial study. And the first thing they say is data lacking to recommend broad mask use. They say we do not recommend requiring the general public who do not have symptoms of COVID-19 like illnesses to routinely wear cloth or surgical masks because, ready? Because there is no scientific evidence they are effective in reducing the risk of SARS-CoV-2 transmission. And this article was released on April 1st, 2020. There is no evidence to support that decision, which goes back to my point is we need evidence. We need somebody to actually study this and give us the right information. Their use may result in those wearing the mask to relax other distancing efforts because they have a sense of protection. And then, of course, there's a comment about preserving the mask to those locations that truly need it when you're dealing with the virus itself, right? So, I mean, that's okay, but that's really not the point. We have an industry out there that should be be able to supply more than ample supplies around the country, because we're not seeing the kind of hit on use, especially here in Wisconsin. So, for example, Governor Evers was all excited about getting masks. Well, why doesn't he send them somewhere where they need them? We don't need them. We haven't had another death in the last week. I mean, our hospitals are not overrun. In fact, they're closing. I mean, our local clinic closed, and now they're in Wausau. So I can't go to the doctor here in Edgar. I got to go drive all the way into Wausau to go to the clinic. So they also talk about respirators. I mean, we do not know whether respirators are an effective intervention as source control for the public. A non-fit tested respirator may not offer any better protection than a surgical mask. I mean, I talked about this several weeks ago because I have to use respirators and masks from time to time when I go into places. I mean, I'm a licensed structural engineer here in the state of Wisconsin and a couple of other states. And when they need me to go into locations that have chemicals they're being used or things in the air that we're not supposed to breathe, everything from an N95 mask I've used, and also I've been fitted for a respirator, and that's a lengthy process. You have to put it on, make sure it fits right, and then you got to put it on, and they test to make sure there's no gaps around the outside so that the air that's coming in is only coming through the canisters and going out through the canisters. And those canisters, that's why they come off, can be designed to do any number of things. Like an N95 mask also has another number or letter that relates to using it in oily conditions, so that it explains to you how often you can use it. Using it once or how long. You might not be able to use it for that whole length of time you're going to be in there. So you have to monitor how much time you're using. The same way with canisters, you've got to monitor how long you're using it. Otherwise, it becomes infected because it becomes overloaded, and then it stops filtering. I mean, this is true science, people. This is not made up. This is factual data that I've had to use for many years in terms of the work I've done around the country. So, and in addition, it's being supported by the University of Minnesota. So again, I also talked about the fact that we need unbiased, like the University of Minnesota or potentially another, maybe 2 or 3 universities that provide a real study on how we effectively stop COVID if we're going to wear masks. Because in this study, which I will provide a link for down below in my description, and you can read the entire article, it talks about the totally lack of efficiency related to a cloth mask. It's not going to do anything. I've said it from the very beginning. Because here's the bottom line. COVID-19, coronavirus, Wuhan flu, whatever you want to call it, is what I'm understanding and what I've seen in studies is 0.07 to 0.09 microns. An N95 mask handles 0.3. So it's not even close to filtering the kinds of size of microns that you might or might not be able to experience. And in particular, this N95, the Wuhan flu. Sorry, I'm stuttering there a little bit. But there's nothing that gives us the broad spectrum that says, okay, it'll go down to 0 and it goes up to 0.3, or it starts at 0.3 and goes higher. Some of these tests have been started at 0.5, which isn't even close to what we're dealing with COVID-19, and the list just goes on and on. An N95 and the N95 mask in the study seem to perform the best, but again, it's not conclusive that it's stopping what we need to with COVID-19. So I encourage you to go down and click the link and read the article, and I will continue to search out a study that actually talks about the use of masks and provide you with some significant data that says, in my mind, if you truly want to keep COVID from either coming through the mask or you producing it going out through the mask, because if you haven't been tested and you have the antibodies, you could be in a room and you could give it to somebody and you don't even know it. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing that works that would be 100% efficient and actually stop anything would be a respirator. These cloth masks you see all the government officials wearing and people wearing around the country are ridiculous. They're only like 10 or 20% efficient. All the air goes through them, the moisture goes through them. It's really a comfort idea. In addition, as far as I'm concerned, it's a bacteria factory. And the minute you touch it, and then you touch your ears, your eyes, your nose, whatever, if you had somebody projectile COVID-19 bacteria at you, it's on your mask, you touch it, you touch your eyes, you touch your nose, you're done. So, in some sense, as the study indicates, those kinds of masks could be more detrimental. And before we make any kind of policy, and before somebody dictates to us that we need to take drastic action and all run around like in China and Japan with masks on all day long, somebody better really come up with some true data. And that's why you see most of the country saying no to this idea that we need to run around wearing masks all day long. We all know that in some eventuality we've all got to be exposed to it, just like anything else that we've experienced in our lifetime. Build the immunity and move on. And just like with influenza and the flu, older people are more at risk and more susceptible to mortality related to that. I mean, and again, I will say it till this all settles down or even beyond. And you've heard it here and you've heard me say it. You know, we didn't take this action when 60 and 70,000 people a year were dying with the flu. Social distancing would have done the same thing. Washing your hands, keeping your hands off your face, washing and sterilizing the areas. I mean, why didn't we do it when we were dealing with the flu and influenza? It's not really being handled in a way consistent with how we've handled other outbreaks. So I will continue to work on that topic and try to find more data on masks. It might even bring a respirator in to the show, so stay tuned for that. One thing I noticed this weekend is local businesses here in Wisconsin are taking some heat for not opening. I think the whole point of what I've advocated is choice, and I've done my campaign and everything. So restricting choice is something I'm adamantly opposed to. Criticizing and taking huge negative action against companies and making them feel like they're doing something wrong for making a choice is to stay closed. I don't think that's something that needs to be done. If the business doesn't want to open, then you just go do something else. I mean, I know we loved all the choice we got for restaurants, but we may not get that choice anymore. Man, we eat at home a heck of a lot now. But when we go out, there are still places that we can get food from. You can still do takeout, and we shop online more when we can. Trying not to spend as much money either, right? I mean, it hasn't been easy. But you do the best you can. My point being is that if a businesses choose to close, then we shouldn't be after them for being closed. Just let them be closed. That's their choice, right? Same thing like with Menards. Do I agree with Pinkerton Security enforcing mask wearing? No. But if Menards is going to take a position that you got to wear a mask and they're going to go to that extreme, I'm just not going to shop there anymore. I'm just not. And there's plenty of other places to go. In fact, I might even drive across the state to get to a Lowe's before I shop at Menards. But we have Fleet Farm here, we have Home Depot that all recognize choice. So everybody has a choice. Some people wear a mask, some people don't. So let's cut the businesses who are struggling and trying to make decisions about what's in their best interest, because there's more to it than just opening. Small companies have legal issues. I mean, they bring their employees back, they get sick, they could get sued. I mean, attorneys will love it. That somebody will come in and get COVID, and God forbid they have the coronavirus and die. A small business could go out of business, take all their personal belongings, just destitute them for making a decision to reopen. So there are lots of factors going into the decision to reopen, but I'm advocating, and I'm very happy here in Wisconsin, that people have that choice. And that's what we're going to see. So we need to learn that businesses are going to choose when to be open and when not to, and how they're going to be open, because we could see a resurge of activity with COVID here in the fall, and more appropriately, we may see it coming, if it's going to be a one-time-a-year cycle, again in January through March. But we know that China dealt with this in the fall, and we dealt with it in the spring. So it still tracks the flu virus and the flu seasons. So I would not expect to see anything different. And again, we need to watch for officials bringing data to us and bringing information to light of how the data is being manipulated. I mean, they've just come right out and said that even if people are dying from some other cause, but they contracted COVID while they were in the hospital, they're calling it a COVID death. That's not a COVID death. I mean, they have the virus, but that's not why they died. But why would they want to put those deaths in there? Because they want to put the value or the number of deaths and keep it high, so they can keep telling you that wet sand's okay, but dry sand's not. I just tend to believe that the majority of us just don't buy into this crap. Wet sand's okay, but dry sand's not. The sun's bad, but it's not. The sky is blue, but it's not. I don't know. So, well, I'm going to be here keeping my eye on all of this and keeping information coming to you. And please join me if you're not watching me today during the live broadcast. Please, I hope you enjoy the show during the times when you're watching it just as a rebroadcast through YouTube. And on that note, in terms of watching, Tiffany, my opponent in the run for District 7, who was elected in the special election to take over for Sean Duffy, is in Washington. His tomorrow, he gets sworn in, and we'll be watching his activity and his response and his leadership very closely here in the first 100 days and throughout his time, but we're going to watch it pretty closely in the first 100 days. So he traveled with his family across the country driving, which I thought was interesting. So obviously he doesn't feel like they want to fly yet. So he drove across country 16 hours to get to Washington, and now he's there. And again, we'll see what happens tomorrow and if we see anything out of him tomorrow, because he didn't even really announce he's done in the state. He didn't really leave a last directive for his constituents in the state. His final comment was related to seeking the health official here in Wisconsin that they resign. I don't know what that does for anyone, but that's what he said. So, is it just me, or are we all out here wondering what's next? I'm wondering what's next. Is green grass going to be better than brown grass? Food for thought. That's a good one. I like that. Food for thought. Is green grass better than brown grass? Put your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Please join me as always tomorrow, Monday through Friday, from 9 till whenever. We go from 9 to 9:30 usually, but if it goes long, it goes long, because there's information or topics we want to cover. So please call in at 715-352-0801, and as always, subscribe, hit the like button, and share it with your friends. And on that note, have a great day. Hopefully it's sunny where you are, but if it's not, it's a good day to have a fire yet one more time here in Wisconsin. And I'll see you tomorrow.